Welcome to the SDA Housing Podcast, brought to you by NDIS Property Australia. Before starting this episode, we need to provide a general disclaimer. Information contained in this podcast is general in nature only. It does not take into account the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. You need to consider your financial situation and needs before making any decisions based on the information in this podcast. And you should consider seeking independent and professional advice for your personal circumstances. All right, let's begin.
Hi everybody, my name is Minh and I'm your co-host with Matthew and Jessica. And you're listening to the SDA Housing Podcast, a show that explains, highlights, guides and brings awareness about all things SDA in this ever-changing NDIS world. Matthew, Jessica, how are you?
Very good.
Yeah, well, thanks, Minh.
This is the first time we've had our three of us talking together. It's usually been me and Jessica in the past and me and Matthew. Now it's all three of us. It's good to see. Today's topic is property investment analysis and feasibility. So we've recently launched a new service from our office for investors who have invested in or are looking to invest in SDA property. The services are basically doing reports for clients who want to look at feasibility and tenancy mixes, or SDA data reports, or property investment analysis. So let's start with the easy part. Matthew, you've been working on the spreadsheets for a long time in our office with our clients. What's your feedback on the feasibility and the tenancy mix reports we've been doing for the last few years?
I mean, for the most part, we've done, I guess, three main types of information, which is, so one would be just a general monthly income spreadsheet. Mm-hmm. And monthly outlay. So from there, you'd look through the spreadsheet would be essentially, what is outpaid throughout the build process, to get an idea of, essentially at what points you'd pay money, that sort of thing, and just to give kind of some clarity towards the build process and what might crop up as a cost while it's being built. So we've done those for a while, and we didn't really go into too much detail we certainly didn't talk about interest rates or, how it might stack up in terms of direct numbers on serviceability and feasibility, but it was more just an output of looking at just purely what your expenditures would be over the build timeframe. So that was one report that we would send out. The second would be an monthly income calculator, which would just be, how much you'd be paid per month based on what you'd be receiving, and then minusing the provider fees and the associated outlays such as council rates, maintenance, and insurance. And then the third one was a tenancy mix. So that was talking about different scenarios that might arise in terms of individuals who might inhabit a SDA dwelling and what their associated funding levels would be, carried forward to look at what that would mean for an investor in terms of cash flow and yield. So those were the three original, feasibilities that we would do for investors.
Now, Jess, you've recently enhanced that spreadsheet to cover the mortgage payments from a construction phase, which is interest only, and the post-construction phase, which is the P&I payments. Isn't that correct?
Yep, that's correct. We've factored that into our feasibility reports that Matt was just talking to, but that's on quite a generic assumption of interest rate and not sort of individualized to any one investor, rather just to the property itself.
Yeah. Because a lot of people don't realise that there's a construction drawdown loan and different stages of payments as well. And that's clearly covered in the spreadsheet showing the timeline there of all the payments. But then also, Jess, we've touched on this many times in the past few podcasts with you and me. That's a tenancy mix, isn't it?
That's correct. So we made sure to go through all the different possible scenarios with regards to tenancy mixes. So that's talking about the type of tenant, prospective tenant, and their funding that may be eligible to rent a room in the property that you're looking to let out. That can vary depending on the different kind of funding that the tenant actually comes, or the prospective tenant comes with. So it's important to make sure that when you're considering the investment, it's not just assuming if you're building a 3-bed HPS house that you are automatically going to get 3 HPS tenants. It's much more likely that you would get one FA tenant and 1 IL tenant, or 2 IL tenants. So we've sort of enhanced the feasibility spreadsheet and report to better look at that sort of prospective tenancy mix to give you, or to give the investor an idea of the more likely range of return from the different kind of tenants that could come and apply for the property.
So in our last podcast together, Jess, we talked about Section 13. Is that right?
Correct. The lesser of.
Now, is that part of Section Appendix G or H that we talked about? Or is that separate?
For the moment, it's separate. The most recent pricing review report is currently reviewing how that interacts with Section 13, but ultimately it won't apply in most scenarios, because that appendix really just deals with when there is a non-NDIS tenant in NDIS SDA property.
Now, in our last episode that we did together, Jess, we talked about those 5 to 7 different examples of IL alone.
Yes.
Now, in this FEASO that Matt's talking about, there's HPS and FA and IL.
That's it.
Yeah. So we can imagine if there was 7 and 7 and 7 across 3 categories, all mixed together, there's like 40 or 50 or 60 different combinations there. So I just wanted to correct what Jess said. We don't do all the
True. Yes.
We don't all. We just do probably 10 or so of the most likely scenarios in that mix. Yeah. So the feasibility report just shows a bunch of maybe 10 or 12 or 8 different combinations, just to give a gauge to investors to see what the net yield would be. Yeah. Any more to add on that topic there of tenancy mixes, Jess?
No, I think that's covered it all.
Okay, cool. So we've now covered the feasibility tenancy mix done. Now, next topic is the PIA report.
Yeah, so that's a bit of exciting addition to the service, I guess. We now have the ability to utilize some software to customize a report. So we'll be calling it a PIA report, so a property investment analysis report. And what this does is it allows us to take one step further in terms of, from the feasibility reports, in terms of customizing it to the specific investor. So we're talking about not just looking at potential returns on the property generically and having sort of a generic interest and principal and interest repayment with regards to the loan. We're now able to customize it specifically to the investor, to their prospective loan, and thereby give a pre- and post-tax cash flow analysis.
Now, the variables which can be adjusted year on year, I think, Jess, are going to be interest rates, P&I versus interest only, the salary. Well, the salary is obviously a big part of the client's profile. The inflation, CPI rate, which can be modified there. The capital growth as well. So, Jess, wouldn't you agree that all these variable functions in this PIA software allows a more concise and close to a more accurate report for an investor?
That's correct. It's specific to the investor's salary, and we can customize it if the investor already has some kind of indication of the loan they'd be looking to secure in terms of interest rates. And obviously we'd be incorporating the build times and holding costs that come with the feasibility report, but we're just taking it that one level deeper in terms of customization to the actual investor and the pre and post tax cash flow implications for the investor themselves for that property. We've also made sure to customize it because it's not just a case of, looking at a positive or negative geared investment property. There are a lot of specific SDA or NDIS inputs that need to be considered that are beyond the scope of your general normal property investment analysis. So we've factored that in as well to make sure it's as accurate as possible for the current market conditions.
Yeah. So, Jess, can you please clarify to our listeners the difference between the two, being the PIA versus the feasibility? Like, why would you want to look at the feasibility report and why would you want to look at the PIA report?
So the feasibility report is very useful in terms of, for a specific property, setting out essentially a payment sequence. So a time frame of events when we expect, from when we'd expect to receive contracts through to settlement, build start, build finish, and getting tenants in the property. That's really useful just to give an idea of what you and I, Minh, have discussed previously in our podcasts about sort of those hidden holding costs that investors may not necessarily have considered. So it's sort of pointing out where in the payment schedule those hidden costs may fall, and it gives a generic idea of the return on investment for that property because of the tenancy mix work that we've done. The difference with the PIA, the Property Investment Analysis Report, is it doesn't have the step-by-step indication of payment. So it doesn't have the payment sequence, but it takes the expected returns to a very customized level to the investor themselves. So feasibility report is, you'd consider it just as, say, a report on the property itself and a general indication of how it might impact your cash flow if you were to invest in it. But then the PIA report will be customized to your individual financial situation without giving financial advice, but giving a better indication for your current position or the investor's current position in terms of their salary, potential repayments, and how that affects them pre and post tax, which the feasibility report doesn't do.
Yep. Thanks for that, Jess. I guess we're bringing this to the awareness of our listeners and to our customers is because we had a meeting with about 2 years ago with a provider coming into our office, Adapt Housing, and they sat down in our office to look at what we do. And they said that no one in the marketplace does feasibilities. No one.
Yeah.
You might see the odd, very simple one-pager, very simple.
Most cases it's just, this could earn up to 20%.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then three HBSs or three FAs, and that's your answer, or one-pager. No one does full detailed reports like we do out there, and I think we're quite proud to do that ourselves because we believe in giving people the honest truth as to what the hidden traps are, the hidden costs are, because the truth is the truth. People deserve to know what the costs are, the holding costs or the hidden costs for the purchase of a size of this magnitude of 800-900 grand, Matt. Don't you agree?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like obviously. From everyone's perspective, the more information, the better.
Yeah.
When it comes to both making a decision and then also, I feel like we will probably touch on it later in this podcast, but moving forward, in the years that follow, what they would expect, not just from, okay, right now, this is what it looks like, this is what the market looks like right now, but also leading into the future, how does it stack up, so that they can do a comparison against other potential investment vehicles going into the future, I suppose.
One last question for Jess. The CPI, can you modify that every year, or is it it's a fixed number for just one constant?
You can modify it. There's a lot of flexibility around that.
Because as we know, as you all know, the CPI has recently been 6-7%. That has a major impact upon the income. Coming in for investors. Yeah. I guess the RBA, is it RBA? The RBA of Australia, their aim has always been for the last 20 years, a 2 to 3% inflation rate. But we know that's rubbish now.
Yeah.
It's like 7 to 10%. Look at fuel and look at bread, look at everything else in life. It's all just, oh my God, everything's going up so massively. So it ain't 2 to 3%, but always like 6, 7, 8, 9% from now on now. And again, we don't know the future or what the rates will be for CPI, but the NDIA system has incorporated a automatic CPI reflection on the SDA income, which allows us, Jess, to modify the PIA to cover that in the future as well. Yeah. So the last report here, guys, is the SDA data report. Anybody want to cover that, or should I be doing that?
We've talked enough.
Okay. Data research. Now, a lot of times, Matt, and I think I'll ask you now, Matt, a lot of people the last 3 years have been ringing us asking for data, right?
Oh, it's the understatement of the century. Yeah.
And then our answer is always going to be, well, where you want to go? Is it Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, Adelaide, Perth, Darwin, Tasmania? It's hard. Look, it's hard to cover so much information unless we really spend the time to do it. And Matt, as you know, people don't even know where to go.
Yeah. And even if they do have that data, I feel like in a lot of situations, it's data from, 2 months back of looking.
Mate, 6 months, 12 months. So
yeah.
Really.
Yeah. So who was looking then? And it's just a snapshot at that very time, which could change the following week, the following month, or, whenever.
Yeah. So that's why we're doing a SDA data report so that our team can do SA3 regional statistics on demand and supply and pipeline of builds. HPS, FA, ILs, and robust. I think it's important for investors to see what is potentially being built in the area. Don't you think, Jess?
Yeah, absolutely. You don't want to end up in an area of oversupply. It's important to know that all major factors have been considered in the area that you're potentially looking to invest in.
I think the only time we should use the word oversupply is when there's oversupply of participants. Don't you agree?
Ideally.
And undersupply of stock. So look, we the report, we have Lenore in our office and also Debbie. They work very hard in the background, punching through numbers and reports. That's just the thing we do internally. And if investors want to see that as well, I think we should make them become aware that you can always come to us to do these reports. Even if you've engaged a different developer or builder or agent, please, we're happy to provide some support. Matt, you've seen some investors come to us, haven't you, who have already bought something somewhere?
Yeah.
They may be regretting it.
Yeah. So in situations like that, obviously if you've, worst case scenario, what we've heard is just someone approaching us and they've just built an NDIS property. It's all built, ready to go. And they're like, okay, well, what do I do now?
They didn't do their research. They didn't engage a provider. And all they have is an empty house.
Yeah. So situations like that, obviously that's a regrettable outcome, but from there, it's still relevant to know what's actually going on in the market and how their property stacks up compared to others in the area, things they should be aware of leading into the future. So it's absolutely relevant both for people who are considering building in a certain place and also who have built in a certain place.
Yeah. So, Jess, do you want to quote the prices of these reports, please, that you and Donna be working on the last few days in the back office to put the reports combination-wise and everything?
Yep. So we start off with the SDA data report, so the SA3 regional statistics for $200 plus GST. We then move on to the PIA report only, so that standalone. We're not talking about any of the other FEASO SDA reports to get your pre- and post-tax cash flow projections customised to the specific investor's circumstances. That's $250 plus GST. to get the feasibility and tenancy mix report that Matt was speaking to earlier, it's $300 plus GST. And then to combine both the feasibility and tenancy mix report that Matt was talking to and the PIA report that I was speaking about, it's $600 plus GST. So to get the feasibility and tenancy mix report that Matt was speaking to earlier and the PIA report that I've gone over combined is $500 plus GST. And then to get everything possible, all the three reports all together, the SDA report, PIA report, feasibility and tenancy mix report, it's a total of $600 plus GST.
So if you want some or all these reports, then just contact our office to let us know what you're thinking about buying. I'm happy to do a independent research report from our perspective. And that will help you move forwards, I guess. So, Matt, all morning I'll be walking around the office just saying the same thing. What I've been saying?
I mean, you've been saying that, if you're going to have to spend $900,000 on a property, maybe just spend, 500 600 just to find out, what's going to dictate this investment being good or bad, or, the ultimate outcome that you would see through this investment. It's a small price to pay for both peace of mind and information about what you're doing.
Yeah. And Jess, isn't this cost of tax deduction as well, Jess?
That's correct. Yes, if you ultimately go ahead with that purchase, then that's correct.
The biggest thing I would want to tell our listeners in that is when it comes to SDA data, the one thing the SDA data pipeline report, you remember that if you read the footnote, the clause in that report, it's only a survey. The pipeline of data showing the pipeline builds in a particular region come from the pre-lodgement or pre-registration of potential builds in that area. It doesn't mean it will be built. Do you understand that, man?
Yep.
Which is a good indication of the supply coming out. It is. But not everyone registers the information to the NDIA.
Yep.
Exactly. Let's be honest. If you were an investor, you're talking to a builder or developer about a unit or a house in a particular suburb, you don't know how many other builds are happening around the corner. You don't.
You just know your own, and that's about it. Yeah.
I'll give you an example. I won't mention, Jess, this is a very shocking story. I'm telling you right now. I won't mention the suburb or the area or the region or the builder. I won't. It'll be very embarrassing. But we had a client invest in a particular area, and it was a HPS 4-bedroom house with a builder. When it came to completion, we did an inspection. We found out from the building supervisor of the builder that there were 10 other houses in the same street being HPS.
Okay.
In the same, okay, around the corner in the same street, literally within 1 minute.
Yeah.
10 in the same street. Like, how on earth did that builder do that? Why did they even do that? Now, in their defense, they might say, the rules are 10% density mix in an estate, and there's 1,000 lots in the estate, so in theory they're fine, right? That's their defense.
Yep.
And there's nothing wrong. But still, 10 in one street?
Insane.
That's just... And now, we didn't know about that. Our investor wouldn't have known about that. But still, the fact is, there's no way to police this information and to filter it through,
Yep.
And the only way is honesty from a builder. They wouldn't have told us anyway. But to looking at pipeline data.
Yep.
No, I know of another story of another build in Melbourne where one of the providers told us that they know of a particular street that we're aware of. There were 10 robust houses in the same street. and everyone in Melbourne knew about that street. It was like a ghetto of robust housing in one street, and everyone knew about it. And they were refused to put any participants in that area. So again, if you were a builder in that street, how would you have known about the other 9 or 10? You wouldn't have known about it, But providers should know about it, maybe, because they talk about it. And also looking at data reports, I bet you that builders don't look at data reports like this. They don't. No. And if they do, they wouldn't even say anything. It's to them, they're trying to build a house to make money. Right? I'm sorry to being blunt about it, but that's the truth, right? The builders are trying to survive financially. So back to data, we can only do certain research as much as best we can. We can't see everything, but we, in our line of work, being in the SDA space, we talk to builders, we talk to developers, we talk to providers, we talk to investors. We hear a lot of gossip around the place to be aware of oversupply areas, right? And we do our best to do our own research internally to ensure that investors, can see a bit of risk and knowing full well, as you both can agree, buyer beware. We got to do so much research ourselves and to give some guidance to investors, Jess. Yeah. But listen, to you both, thank you so much. We've covered these 3 or 4 report scenarios, or 3 of them, whatever it is, and we encourage our listeners that if you are looking at investing in the SDA space, spend a few $100 to do some research. If you're looking at seriously doing some investment in the India space for property-wise, if you want to see the implications of your tax and cash flow and your yields, talk to Debbie and Matt and Jessica in our office about how we can do a report for you. It'll save you so much headache and pain by avoiding traps and hidden costs if you see what those costs are. And the only way is to have it in writing, Jess. I mean, at the end of the day, if someone says something to you on the phone and they put it in writing, it means nothing, right, Jess?
Yeah, correct.
We're not giving financial advice or property advice. We're giving just generic advice here. And the way I see it, no one else is doing this information. And we're doing our best to guide investors out there to some truth to how the outcome will be. And if the outcome is showing 6-7% returns and not 20% returns, as everyone else is saying, then so be it. The truth is the truth, I guess.
Yep, 100% agree. It's information that people absolutely need to have to be sure of their investment, I suppose.
Jess, any final words of advice from your perspective? Being an accountant, in the past accountant?
Yeah, I'd just touch on the fact that whilst it certainly isn't financial advice that we're giving, we're providing clarity. So clarity around returns, clarity around risk exactly, clarity around potential timing of events. So whilst it isn't financial advice, it is information that will provide a great deal of clarity either about the location that you're looking to invest in or the specific property and potential tenancy mix of that property that you'd be looking to invest in, and then ultimately specific to your circumstances, the rate of return of that property.
And I guess this information we give, Jess, is positive stuff that I think they can go to their accountant to look at as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. The PIA report includes projections over the next 10 years. So it's certainly something that your accountant or financial advisor would, instead of just coming to them with sort of, oh, well, I think I can get this much X dollars in rent, we're able to provide, again, that clarity around, okay, well, this is what it looks like today. What's the rough idea in 10 years' time? That's good for the investor to know. It's good for their advisors to know.
Because if they went to their professional advisors, just legal, tax and accounting, and financial, they may not understand this NDIS thing at all.
Yeah, that's correct.
And by us giving this report to them, it gives them some paperwork to give to their accountant or financial advisor to assess and review over and see whether it is appropriate or not.
Absolutely.
Matt, any final words of advice from you about these reports and what people should do moving forwards?
Yeah. So, my advice would just be do the research, have the research done for you in a way that's presented in the best possible way to give you the most information and, as Jess said, clarity towards what you're potentially investing in.
Yep. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there in the marketplace from the last year or so who have built SDA properties and have regretted it. I'm sure there are out there.
Yep. And if they had this, it might have been a different situation.
It would have saved them heartache, pain, stress, and cost just by spending a few $100 to begin with. Yeah. Jess, Matthew, thank you so much for your time.
No worries. Thanks, Minh.
All right.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please make sure you are subscribed and following us so you can keep in the loop with all of our upcoming episodes. We would really appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star rating, a written review, and to share this podcast with those that could benefit. Until next time, catch you on the next episode.